Well, and welcome to another lesson. In a previous lesson, you were asked to create a function that would draw a circle of squares. And so here's the code for it. Okay, I'm going to go back to the file that we were working with. And so let's see what we have so far. So we have, so we have from turtle import shape, speed 0, that's the fastest speed. Define draw square. I'm not gonna call this. And so now I'm gonna add this function in. Def circle of squares is what I'm gonna call it. Remember the colon, enter or return for I in range 60. So we're gonna have this repeat 60 times. The code in this block here. Draw square. So notice how I'm putting a function inside of another function here. So earlier we've defined the draw square function, and so now the draw square function is going to get called inside this for loop, which is inside of this circle of squares function. And then write 5 degrees. Now, if I want to call this, I'm going to press enter, enter again, and then delete twice or backspace twice, circle of squares. So that's going to call the circle of squares function. So how this is going to work is it will run what is in this section here in this block. So the for loop will execute. This code is going to repeat 60 times. So a square is going to be drawn. So once Python reads this, draw a square, it will go to this code over here, and this code will execute. So a square will be drawn. Then what's going to happen is there's going to be a rotation by 5 degrees. And then another square is going to be drawn. Okay, and then there's going to be another turn to the right 5 degrees. And again, a square is going to be drawn. So let's run this and see what happens. Run module, I'm going to save it. And then we can see what is happening here. Okay, so a square is drawn, and then we can also see a square is drawn 60 times. But there's a rotation by 5 degrees each time after each square is drawn. So we can kind of see it looks like, yeah, there's a circle inside here. Now we can slow this down a little bit. So let's say we go with a speed of 3, just so that we can see this better here. Yeah, it seems pretty fast, but with a speed of 3, yeah, so it's still fast, but not as fast as it was before. And so it's easier now to see what is being done. That a square is drawn, the turtle turns 5 degrees to the right, it draws another square, turns 5 degrees to the right, draws another square. And this is repeated 60 times. Okay, so if I want this just to stop running, I'm just gonna press on this on the close button here. Okay, so what if we wanted to change the size of the squares in exercise number 2? So in math class, variables are represented by single letters, but in programming, they are words that represent a value that can change. So variables store values in them. Now, they don't only store numerical values, but they can also store strings, which are basically like words. Okay, or strings could also be sentences or expressions. Now, you want to be as descriptive as possible when you're naming variables. it will make your code easier to read. So let's modify the draw square function to draw squares of any size. And so the way that we do that is in the parentheses that are written after the draw square, we're going to add this variable side length. Okay, and so let's go back to our file, and I'm going to change this. I'm going to add side length in here. Now, when we call the function, we can choose a value for the side length of the square. Okay, so one other thing that I forgot to do is I also have to add side length here, where forward is. So side length. So note that variables have to be one word or two words separated by an underscore. So no, there shouldn't be a space between if it's two words. The draw square function can now, so the draw square function now accepts an argument. An argument is a value or values that a function accepts. So try calling draw square 80 and draw square 40. So let's try that. You can also try it on your own. So instead of calling circle of squares, I'm just going to call draw square 40. Let's see what that looks like. Let's run it. Okay, we can kind of see that the square is now smaller. Okay, now what about 80? Let's see what happens here. It's bigger. Okay. Okay, so what you're going to do for exercise number 3 is you're going to write and run a function that draws the following square pattern. So the side length of the square is decreased by 5 units each time. The decrease in side length is repeated 19 times. The original side length of the square is 100 pixels. Okay, so you might be wondering, how do you increase and decrease the size incrementally? So you would want to use the statement side length equals side length minus 5, or for short, side length minus equals 5, to decrease the value of the side length by 5 pixels. When declaring the variable, do not leave a space between side and length. Okay, write either side length or side underscore length. Okay, so spaces are not allowed. Okay, so good luck completing this exercise.